The 1960s. It would have to be one of the most transformative times of the past century. Never have we seen a decade with such depth and change when it came to almost everything. The 1950s were seen as the conservative era with the all-American nuclear family standing on the freshly cut lawns of society. The 1970s were adrift in a sea of political strife, increased global conflict, oil embargoes, deadheads, and avocado wallpaper. The 1960s was the transition between the two. It started with Pat Boone and ended with Jimi Hendrix. Ozzy and Harriet did not see that one coming. When the masses scream for change loud enough, decades like the 60s are born. Horror movies were no different, and in those days, things started ramping up. Not to say that edgy films didn't exist before 1960, but for reasons passing understanding, most of them had very niche audiences and, much like the Edsel and its Buck Rogers dashboard, just not ready for mass public consumption. Movies like Psycho and The Innocents got the decade off on the right foot, each with their own chilling takes on, respectively, some serious mental health issues and the supernatural. Production companies such as Hammer Films and American International Pictures were among the more prominent, with an almost endless helping of Corman Poe and Dracula Frankenstein movies. These films were nothing short of brilliant and focused more on the mind and atmosphere rather than straight-up graphic violence. Suburban 1960s still clung to that conservative mindset from the 50s, but even if Cablevision late-night movies had existed back then, these horror classics would not show up on any of them. Values of the time would still see rotating Gene Autry and John Wayne movies. Look at that living room. They knew how to do it back then. Not like today, where people like turning their living room walls into giant motivational sticky notes. Movies like Night of the Living Dead and Rosemary's Baby push through the wall of any remaining resistance, and though they remain rooted as classics of the 60s, the 70s and beyond would feel their direct influences. I almost forgot about those grindhouse movies, or specifically, the splatter genre, which is often omitted from general horror discussion, and most people might not even be aware that such films existed in the early 60s and are often mistaken for originating much later. But Herschel Gordon Lewis said screw that. He knew buckets of blood would sell, and he was right. Blood Feast, which came out in 1963, had a budget of only $24,000, shot over a period of 4 days, and grossed over $4 million. $4 million despite being banned in most places outside the United States, and mainly playing the drive-in circuits. That type of payday makes Herschel Gordon Lewis a genius in my books. The 60s were marked by significant social upheaval, including civil rights, feminist movements, anti-war protests, and the counterculture. Horror often mirrored these tensions, using fear to explore social anxieties and being more experimental with boundary-pushing films. This era saw a general departure from traditional horror tropes, embracing these more complex themes and hence making horror a vital part of the cinematic landscape. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. I thank you all, and I'll see you at the next slaughtering. Bye now.